we'd like to ask, and Victor Cora has graciously agreed to present us with a case study. I'll let Victor introduce the situation, both from a marketing, branding, and sales situation, and then Daniel and I will take a shot at providing a recommendation or some suggestions on how he might approach it, how he might get through some of those obstacles, and how we can help. And then we'll finish things up with any closing comments, questions, and answers. So let me introduce Victor Cora.
And I was just told this literally earlier this morning in the email, so this is going to be fun. I'm looking forward to
I
this.
found out at 9:30 last night, so we are good. I love these challenges.
Let's go, Victor. Let's hear what you got. I may take some notes if that's okay with you.
Very much. Well, thank you, and Jack, thank you. Sometimes you run into a situation where you think you have a brand that everybody supposedly knows, and in my case, it's Univision. Univision is a Spanish language network. Most of you knows has worked with it, and Victoria, his wife, and my sister, and his cousin, Manny. But here in Jacksonville, the Hispanic community is growing, and when Univision asked me to help launch it, I said, great, I think it's a great idea. It's the first national network that comes into town, but it hasn't been that easy. You know, as you start knocking on doors and you start introducing this #1 Spanish network into the community, you don't have a lot of the qualitative information and data. So I am selling the network more an affinity to the brand, an affinity to the product that we're trying to sell. So I'm getting a lot of pushback, and it's becoming more of a challenge to sell. We've been in the market a year, and it hasn't been as easy to help about. Obviously, you know, any startup, you know, it's not as easy to sell the first year. But with Univision, you would think, you know, this is a national brand. Everybody knows the name itself is going to sell, and it has not been, you know, that easy to sell. Bob has been coaching me for a while, and we have been working on different approaches. So the approach that I've been taking is the loyalty that the Hispanic market has to the brand. Once we embrace your product, we're loyal to it, we stick to it. So I've been going the affinity market approach because Jacksonville's Hispanic market, unlike other Hispanic markets, we don't have, you know, we don't have your typical body store. You know, you don't find us in one area like in Arlington. You're going to find us in Orange Park on the west side. We're spread out because of our large landmass. So most of your buyers are going to think, well, the Hispanics are not here, and that's a misnomer in our market. They expect to go to a particular part of town and expect to find us here. So that's part of the education also that I find myself having to do every time I knock on doors. They don't think that we're large enough. We're growing, and I'm sure that Dan has found himself dealing with that as he's traveled around the country. Back when he went to Atlanta the first time and told Atlanta the Hispanics are coming, and I laughed when he said that, because when I got here in 1984 from Puerto Rico to the Mayport area, we were less than 1% of the population. And if we found a Hispanic family somewhere, we took them home and fed them, and that's how the relationship began as we saw the market grow. Fast forward now, we're 10%, a little over 10% of the population, and we're projected to be over 200,000 Hispanics by 2020. So we are coming, we're here, and we're growing here in the North Florida area. So the challenge that I'm finding now as we're introducing this national affiliate that's in town is, how do we get the Fortune 1000 companies to embrace this Spanish language network that's here without the qualitative numbers and selling the market with the affinity that we know we have to the brand, because Hispanics, as a segment of the population, are very loyal to brands once we embrace them. And also to encourage these companies that the train is leaving the station, and if you wait for it to leave the station, it's going to cost you more to capture this market.
Perfect, perfect. Daniel, or Victor, thank you very much for that. I'll make a little comment about that from a sales standpoint. Then I'll hand it over to Daniel, and we'll hopefully come up with some ideas for Victor and for those of you that may be involved in the same situation. But again, it has application. From a sales standpoint, and I've been there, new person in town. Who are you doing business with? Well, not really anybody. Just launched in March. Okay. Mentioned the demographics. That can be very powerful, but again, they still don't see themselves in that situation, which I think what is occurring from what I heard. We don't see them. They're not in our stores. Well, they're not in our stores because they're not doing business with you. But they're out there. And we have all the data. You mentioned he has demographics and, playing off of the approach that Daniel took up in Atlanta with Auto Trader. You've got to have the facts. Show them that they are here. You're just not seeing them. But I would recommend one thing, Victor, and we may have talked about this, is Univision is in other markets, and they've gone through the same things. Maybe on a bigger scale, maybe on a smaller scale, but in any event, they've gone through the same things. And I know we have not talked about this, but just popped into my mind. Share with them what those other groups, it's the same product, it's the same demographics, it's just here in Jacksonville. You're putting it in Jacksonville. What those other stations may have gone through in getting, and see now that they're in place and have advertisers with them, what kind of results they're getting from those. Maybe not naming names, keeping them private and anonymous, but okay, admit it. We're a new player in town, but we want, again, you got to get out ahead of this, you got to get in front of it, otherwise you're going to get left behind. But here's what's going on in some other markets, and those are facts. Those are success stories. You're part of the same company. And take that approach. The other thing too is, really to ask them the question. Because quite frankly, sometimes you may be talking to people that says, you know what, 10% of the market, that's not enough for me to pay attention to get 10% more market in that market. Or all, they're not going to get all of that 10% of the market, but that percentage is too minuscule. Because I'll tell you, I've run into these situations in my career where I thought it was a lot of money to make income for an organization, and they said, it's not enough, we don't even pay attention. Unless you can generate $1 million in revenue for us, we're not interested. Our attention will be spent elsewhere. We can make $10 million in revenue. So asking those questions about what is your desire, and do you see value in capturing that market? Because you can share all the demographics. They spend money, they're loyal, they're very connected in the Hispanic community, they talk to one another. You got paid advertising. Do business with one, you can do business with 10 fairly easily than in some other cultures in general. So really ask them, do they see value in approaching that market? Instead of saying there is value and let me show you the value that's there. You got to get that connection between them to say, again, as Daniel talked about, that conviction. Yeah, something I need to talk about, it's something I want to pay attention to. I've been thinking about it. Thank you for being here, and let's talk further. So provide some real life data and then really get into it about whether they're even convicted about getting into that market. Daniel?
So there are 7 markets. I went trip around the country as I was listening. There are 7 markets that are similar to Jacksonville in 2016 that were like this in 2000. They are Charlotte, Tampa, Phoenix, Atlanta, Las Vegas, and Denver. Take those markets, go back with Univision, find out what their media marketing kits were selling at that point 15 years ago in those particular markets. Because now, ask yourself when you're selling today, by the way, this is not now, this is not 5 years from now, but let me tell you something, 15 years ago, these markets were Jacksonville, the exact mirror, 200,000 spread out. By the way, the Hispanics were not, you have to look at each particular city. So for instance, if you're in Orlando, there's Puerto Ricans. If you're in Houston, there's Mexican. If you're in Phoenix, it's Mexican. So if you're in Chicago, you have a mix. So if you're in New York, you got a huge mix. If you're in Miami, you got Cuban as well as now South American and so on. So there's a different type of market that we're talking about here. But if we look at Jacksonville, landmass spread as well as where the market is, those cities, go back to those cities 2000, do your research, find out where they were. I guarantee you it's mirroring with Jacksonville, and they're going to have a very similar trend. The growth of the Hispanic market will continue to grow that way. That's the first thing I would say to you. Number two, brand loyalty development. The reality is that what they're going to be doing right now is because Hispanics extremely loyal to a brand, extremely loyal. So, so if you can develop that loyalty now, then you're going to capture them. That's what basically the folks that were in Atlanta recognized. They realized that, wait a minute, if I get in now, my apartments are going to be taken up. We're going to have 95, 98% occupancy. Well, guess what? That's exactly what's happened. And so the Hispanics have taken over parts of Atlanta, Charlotte, of course, Orlando, Houston, Dallas. Dallas is huge. Dallas is another market that might be similar, though a little bigger. Colorado Springs, Denver, Salt Lake City, San Francisco, San Jose. I'm just thinking of all the markets that I've been involved in terms of where that are similar to Jacksonville. Spread out landmass, 10% of the population. Well, that 10%. That 200,000 is going to represent about 15% by the time you factor in growth in the other markets, overall population. So you're going to go from 10 to about 15% just in the next, I think, 5 to 10 years. So what you have to then ask yourself as a company, is that a market that's good, lucrative enough for you? Do you want brand loyalty, and is that brand loyalty valuable enough to you for you to be able to say, hey, I really want to engage in that market? So I would definitely do that, your research there as far as those two things. And I would, I guess the third thing I would really get into is the demographics. The reason why I sold in Houston in 2000 and sold in Dallas and sold in all these different cities is because I did utilize the demographics to understand here's what's happening now, but here's what's going to happen 5 years from now. By the way, just so you know, I was pinpoint accurate on my prediction what was going to happen in 2005. I was pinpoint accurate what I thought the 2010 census was going to say. I mean, pinpoint accurate from where we were in 2000. And I would utilize, I say, listen, there's been predictive models from 2000 to 2010 census that proved to be completely accurate and in some cities actually overshot. I said, so now we're looking at 2010 to 2020. And let me tell you, here are the predictive models. You've already outlined some of them already, 200,000 by 2020. Okay, so you've got predictive models, but you've got to take that and match it with the 2000 to 2010 census as far as demographics are concerned. Because and then what I did, I used MapPoint for this particular, I bought a program called MapPoint, and I basically then outlined where every single Hispanic was living, literally. And I did a color code in which I said, okay, here's 2000, here's what 2010 Houston's going to look like. And they went, you're out of your mind. I said, mark my words. You get in now, this is 2010 Houston. This is 2010 Jacksonville. That's what I would do. I didn't launch Jacksonville at the time because it was too small, the Hispanic market. But now that's not the case. Jacksonville mirrors Charlotte, Tampa, Phoenix, Atlanta, Las Vegas, and Denver, and Washington, D.C. to a lesser extent.
Helpful? Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Again, that's kind of the way we roll, is to look at situations and come up with solutions.